are.
All right.
Okay. Oh, hi.
Oh, hey, Jewel. How are you?
Hey, Peter. I'm
It's
good.
been a while, huh?
It has been a
It has
while.
been. So, should we make excuses? We should, because excuses are good.
So busy. Just,
Yeah. So, we could blame COVID and this, that, and the other thing. So,
I don't know, COVID. Meanwhile, Zoom is like a friend of COVID. Hi.
and you're listening or watching Rush the Bus. I'm Pete,
And I am Julie.
and we're partners, and we work. I don't really care. Should we say it?
We work 911 in Brooklyn, New York.
Yes. So any of our
Oh,
views
yeah.
don't affiliate with our current employer, any of our previous employers, and they're our own views.
Yes, that is correct.
Perfect.
Central Rush the Bus behind the 744 Gate Avenue and 750 Gate Avenue.
Now we got that out of the way. So
Okay.
we're gonna edit out the part where we're talking about our excuses. So
Yeah, I know. We haven't done a podcast in a while, unfortunately.
Mhm.
There are no real good excuses. We've just had stuff going on. You know, it is what it
Mhm.
is. So sorry about that, folks, if you've been
Yes.
waiting.
So 2022, we're gonna hope to get more podcasts. We hope that people actually want to talk to us, because it kind of feels like nobody wants to talk to us.
Well,
And
I
it's just
think
gonna be us.
people want to talk. It's just EMS it's medical. So HIPAA laws and everything, people get nervous, and our social media policies tend to be a lot stricter than like fire media policies. So
Mhm.
I think it's, people just get like a little worried that they're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
We won't, we're not going to publish like the names and addresses of our patients or anything. So
Mm-mm. Nope. But yeah. So anyway, so Joel, so tell us a little bit about yourself, because I don't think anybody's really heard about us.
well, in a long time,
In a long
maybe.
time.
So there's some background noise here. That's my child watching shows and playing Roblox. Sorry if you all hear that, but I am Julie. That's okay, Papa. I am a paramedic in New York City, and I've been working for the city of New York for 15 years this past October. But I've been an EMT for about, I guess, 17 years or 18 years now. And I worked upstate before I worked in New York City. I worked up in the city of Poughkeepsie for a little while. I was raised here in Queens. And anyway, that's kind of it. I became a paramedic in 2008. I became an EMT, I think, in 2003 or 2004. And that's all, I guess. And Peter, what's your
Oh, how
deal?
lovely. So I'm Pete. I'm Julie's partner. We both work in Brooklyn. Let's see. So I started in the fire department in 2012. I was hired as an EMT, and I went to top class. So I learned how to be an EMT all over again. And it was quite the ordeal to learn their way of doing things. So let's see. I started as a volunteer in like 1999. And then I became an EMT. I worked all over different places in New Jersey, like Long Branch, East Orange, Jersey City, Monroe Township, a couple other places. I went to medic school and I became a medic in 2008. Yeah, 2008. And I went to school down in Philly. I wrote Medic 3 in West Philadelphia. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I only got like one good job when I was on my rotations. That was it.
Really?
Yeah, it was some guy. He got came as like a stabbing, and it was like surreal because usually in Philly, like the cops, they take all the good trauma. So like if you're not right there, like the cops, they grab the person and they throw him in the car or the paddy wagon, they drive him to the hospital. So
Crazy.
so like they're buffing jobs like we do at work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
like, I don't get how that's still allowed. I get it if it's a cop, but like,
yeah,
if it's a regular patient, what are you doing?
I don't know. But I mean, hey, it's the way they work. It's the way they work, So
Yeah.
so we got there, we're like right with the cops, and it was a row frame. And I remember the cop somebody opened the door. I think it was the chick who stabbed her it was her boyfriend. So we come in, it was like a little, like the living room. And there was like 3 spots in the living room that didn't have blood on it. It was crazy. And then, so like she goes running down the hall after, like, going and locks herself in the bedroom. And so the cop goes after her. He's got her at gunpoint. He's like, oh, he's in here. He's in here. And there's a dude in the hallway. It's like a skinny, like a regular size hallway, I guess. But it was just like a blob of dude. Just like.
Stabbed up?
Yeah. But she stabbed him with like a medieval sword.
What?
Yeah. And like the crazy thing is all this blood, I think he got like stabbed in like his femoral artery and his whole hand was like cut like from here to here. But like in his groin, it was like a tiny little nick.
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's so wild, right? It's like sometimes that one spot gets you, you know?
Yeah.
We had
Yeah.
that job like, it was like,
Oh
in the
yeah,
last
we
couple
did just have a guy like that. Remember that?
Yeah, where it
They
looked like
got him
maybe he was stabbed
twice.
with an ice pick, and it was like he had this tiny little hole in his thigh, but his thigh was like twice the size of the other one, and it had to get tourniqueted, and he was
Wait,
like,
which one are we talking about?
I think it
The
was
one where we
Halloween.
with the BLS and it was a bloodbath?
No, it was not
Oh, that
bloody. That
wasn't
was
what
the thing. The guy got stabbed, I think, twice. I think it was Halloween weekend. He almost died. Like he was in really bad shape, and
Yeah, we were
it
with the
was
BLS.
blood.
It was a bloodbath.
It
It wasn't
that
in our
bloody.
truck.
No, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. We
Oh,
were
maybe
up
it
off
was
of,
a bloodbath because they first
we were
got
on
him in there and he was
Brooklyn.
squirting.
we were
Yeah.
on like Brooklyn Ave or something.
But
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, you know, this tiny little cut, and we were looking everywhere for something else, and that was it. It was just, it must have got him right in the artery, and
Yeah.
all you need,
Yeah.
you know, is that one
Mm.
good shot, I guess. I mean, if you
Yeah.
want to be a murderer, like that's all you need. A good
There's nothing
understanding of anatomy and physiology.
I know. Yeah. There's nothing good than a good bloodbath. So
Uh, I mean, it's not good for them.
no. But for us, you know, so
Well, for us, pretty exciting, I guess, is
Yes.
like a better way. It's not good, you know.
I mean,
Listen, we all work this job and we all get excited by like the exciting jobs, you know, kind of makes this job more enjoyable than like just
Mhm.
going on, you know, like the pretend chest pains that end up being a stomach ache and it's like a 25-year-old, you know. But yeah, those are usually the worst days of someone's life, you know. So
definitely makes for a bad day. So
yes, for them.
mhm.
Keep going back into them
Yes.
so I can have Hawaii.
Yes, I wish I wasn't on a beach right now.
I hate the
Beach?
beach.
You guys are
Ew.
weird.
Beach,
Mm.
gross.
Eating the beach. I don't understand. The beach is
She
literally.
just says this stuff just because. So
Me?
I
I
gotta
don't know.
tell you, if I could go away right now, if it weren't like COVID, if we weren't in a COVID pandemic, I would be like sitting on the beach right now. I need it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I had a no.
We're podcasting from our homes with our kids,
Yeah.
our separate
So yeah.
children. Our kids are not. So yes. So how do you like working in Brooklyn, Peter?
I like working in Brooklyn. I tell you, you know what? I usually work places and I get bored after like a year or 2 years of being in the same place. The only other place that I was in for more like 3 or 5 years is like was Monroe. I was in Monroe for like 9 years. And you know, I mean, it was a big township. You know, there was a good amount of people, but you know, it just blew up. You know, there wasn't anything to eat initially there. There was like pizza and Wawa, and that was it, you know. And now there's everything. So I drove through there the other day. They have like I'm like jealous. I'm kind of glad I wasn't there when they had Tractor Supply, because that's where majority of all my money would have gone. So,
Tractor Supply.
yeah.
Tractor Supply is a store that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, but because I
I don't
grew
have
up
a
in the
tractor,
city of New
nor do
York-
I have a farm.
Yeah, I never even heard of this store until I met you. Like I had no idea this even existed because I don't think there's any in New York City.
No,
Maybe there's
but
one in
nobody has a
Staten Island,
tractor. No,
potentially.
they don't
I
have
don't
any in
know.
Staten Island. No.
So there's
Maybe on
not
Long
one in
Island.
New York City. Maybe on Long
Upstate,
Island.
where Neil lives, I know he has a Tractor Supply.
I think there are some on Long Island. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But there are farms in Long Island and there are farms upstate New York. But in the
Yeah.
city, we have no use for such stores.
Speaking of farms, my aunt said when she moved on Staten Island, there was a pig farm and her street was dirt.
Yes. Yeah, a friend of ours who used to work in our station grew up in Staten Island in the 70s. And she said the street she lived on when she was a kid was a dirt road, you know, but Staten Island is not that anymore. I mean, it's like, you know, it's a suburban borough mostly.
But
Like,
you would never know. Like if you go off, you know, off the highway and stuff, you know, the first time, like I remember I was working with Lou Brunk and we're doing overtime. Hold on.
taking a brief pause because Peter's children are tossing themselves around or
They want to do
tossing each
back
other.
bends. They're doing
Oh,
back bends right next to me because we don't have a house to go and do
Yeah.
back bends other places. Yeah, so I was with Brunk, and we had this guy was like a GI bleed, and you know he's from Staten Island, he lives there, so he knew where he was going, and so we got the guy in the truck. We're going. I called a note in. I was like, yeah, you know, we'll be there in 10 minutes. We're still riding. Like, yo, where the? I was like, yo, where the fuck are we going? And I'm like, Lou, like, where are we? It's like, a couple more minutes. Like, oh, we got another 10 minutes. I'm like, we're in Staten Island. Like, how big is this place?
It's pretty
So,
big.
It is. And, you know, they have deer and huge
Yeah.
turkeys.
Yep.
So, yeah. So
Well,
you would never know.
No,
But
I
you're in
mean,
New York
Staten
City.
Island is yeah, it's part of New York City, but it's like pretty close to the Jersey border and it's just, it's like much less developed than, you know, let's say
Yeah.
Brooklyn or certainly than Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have deer in New York City. Well, here we don't in Queens.
There's
We have
everywhere.
raccoon sometimes. We have
Yeah.
possums, I think, sometimes. We have loads of rats. So, so there's that, you know. What's that? You're muted.
That video, the rat video.
The one that we took?
No, the one from the station. This is like years ago. I think you were still on maternity leave
Yeah.
and stuff. And we had, it was, I forget whose birthday it was, but we have like a birthday party for somebody at the station. And there was a lot of people in the kitchen. And we had, the cake was on the counter. And so like to put in perspective, like our kitchen is like, it's like a big square. And then off to the right-hand side, is where all our cabinets are, and then there's a stove, and there's like a hole in the drop ceiling where the stove is. So we're all sitting there, we're making a ton of noise. Yo, this rat comes out of the ceiling, down the pipe, and tries to eat the cake while we're all there.
That is egregious.
Mhm.
Also, that's scary because that rat probably had like rabies or something. Like what animal?
Yo, that cake must have been
do that?
good. So yeah, yep. So and I think
And then-
we waited. Yeah, we missed it that time, and then I think we waited for like 4 hours and stuff. Like we baited him out, and it took 4 hours.
And then
get him out.
what happened to him, Peter?
He
I've
had a
seen
head
the
injury.
video. Would you like to? What's that?
He got a head injury.
He did get a traumatic brain injury
Mhm.
with was it a broomstick?
That was a cane.
That's gross.
Ask Neil about rats. Yeah, Neil does not like rats.
No,
Yeah.
or mice, but I mean, like
No.
it's a little off-putting when you're in the station and all of a sudden, you know, like you see movement. We haven't, thank God. I'm not.
We haven't had it in a long time.
No, thank
So
goodness. And it's surprising because we haven't had a cat either. Like we usually.
I just think
when
they
we-
know, you know. Mm.
But they haven't been there. I mean, since like around COVID time, I think, right? It's like when the last
Maybe
time
they all
we had
got COVID.
maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
We had another one, Chris. We were doing shift change in the morning, and a rat came in like the foyer and stuff, like in the middle of the station. So like when you come in the outside door and you can go in the bay or the lieutenant's office, this
Mhm.
rat wanted to come do shift change with everybody, and Chris kicked it once,
Ugh.
and then it ran away, and then it came back out, and he got it again. It was like goal. It was like that soccer kick,
Oh,
you know, where he's gonna make
no.
like the winning penalty kick.
Yikes. I
Mhm.
mean, the rats in New York, though, they're not like docile. You know what I mean? They're
No.
not, they're a little aggressive. And they'll run up on you,
Mhm.
like, so I'm not like for injuring animals, but I feel like, if a rat is running towards you, like you should probably kick it
Yo,
because
I'll
it's
take rats over roaches though.
hell no. Well,
Yeah. Are you
I
crazy?
don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I am glad we don't have roaches in the station. But like, uh-huh. Jesus, did you hear my child? He said
No.
if a rat was coming towards him, he'd stomp on its head. And that is aggressive, but I can't fault you for that
They're
because they're
cute though.
pretty
I don't
sketchy
know.
looking.
Hmm.
They're
I saw a
big,
three-legged rat
especially.
when I was in the Bronx. There was a rat with like 3 legs.
Oh
Like it looked like
no.
they ate one of his legs.
Ew. Yeah, they're kind of crazy animals. I mean, they're very smart
I don't know.
and
I'll
they're
still
very
take rats over
sociable.
roaches because you can see them.
Rats, yes.
You know what I'm
Roaches,
saying?
they're like tiny and they get into literally everything, every crack and crevice. There's a lot of roaches in New York City. That is one thing.
And if you're in
Like even
denial, you call them water bugs.
I call them water bugs. Every New Yorker,
No,
Peter, calls giant roaches water bugs.
no.
There's two different kinds of roaches in New York City that you'll see: the American cockroach and the German cockroach. German cockroach is small. It's usually like an inch long or smaller and they're gross. And then there's the American cockroach, which is a freaking nightmare. It's like a monster. It's
Remember that one we
humongous.
saw? We're
Yes.
in the projects and they had
On the
on the
railing.
knoll post. It was like a 4x4 square of a knoll post, and the roach like covered the whole thing.
Yeah, and I almost put my hand on it. I
I
was like
know.
coming down
That
the
was
stairs
funny.
and like, okay, like this is my little hair clip. It would have fit in my hand like this, like
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
And yeah, like so those are water bugs to New Yorkers. That's like not a roach because that shouldn't be in your apartment. Like, you know what I mean? Like water bugs are like out in the street, they're in the basement, they're like in like moist areas. Roaches get in people's apartments and stuff. And also
We're in
water
one.
bugs, when you step
I
on
yo,
them, out of them.
I should get Rob on here, yo, because we had one. It was like I feel bad for whoever lives around these people because it was like the middle of a row, and these people they like filled the bottom up. So if you look at a brownstone, the first floor is like the main floor, and then when you go up the stairs, that's known as the parlor floor, which is technically the first floor, but then when you go to the next floor, that would be the second floor. So they had filled up the basement, the parlor floor, and now they were living on the second floor.
Yeesh, like a
So we go
hoarder.
upstairs. You know, it's like just look like a regular, dirty apartment. It is what it is. No big deal. So, we're doing our thing. And so we had our bags out. There was no roaches. They didn't notice anything crazy. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna put everything on the stair chair just because. Well, in 10 minutes, these roaches must have realized that we're nice guys and we weren't gonna stomp all of them. Have you ever
Oh.
saw Joe's apartment where they all start coming out and stuff from like wherever? And we were fending them off the bags. They were coming. I've never seen so many roaches like walk out of places in my life. That was
Yeah, that's like a huge infestation. Like
that was
you
horrible. I
know
feel
that
bad
there's
for their
a
neighbors.
roach.
You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you keep bombing that, like,
Yeah, but that's the unfortunate thing. There's a lot of buildings in New York where even if you keep your place clean, if your neighbors don't, it is what it is. And like,
Mhm.
roaches go through the drain pipes, they go all through the walls. And some people have such a bad infestation that they don't take care of, that you could do everything in your power
Mhm.
and like never get rid of them. And also like a true infestation is like when you'll see them in the daytime.
Yeah.
Like if you go in someone's house in the middle of the
Oh my
daytime
God, yeah.
and you see a ton of roaches, you can only imagine that the numbers are like in the millions
Yeah.
probably,
Mm.
which is really scary and creeped. Plus it's like actually bad for asthma, for a lot of things. It causes like a lot of health problems for people, particularly like kids with asthma and stuff.
Yeah. We went on a job the other day and there was a roach swimming in the toilet. That shit. Yeah.
Yeah, they swim. They can hold their breath.
Mhm. Remember that ER we were in that shall remain nameless? Mhm.
Uh-huh. Sorry.
We can't tell you what ER that was, but it was quite
Oh,
the
yeah,
the
it's
large.
junk came out of its body. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hunter was telling us he was at camp in a school building in New York City, and there was a giant roach and he stepped on it and all this stuff came out of it.
Yeah, you can't. You're not supposed to step on roaches either, because and then
Yeah,
if you
because you
do,
bring the stuff
yeah,
inside.
bring the
with
eggs
you.
home to your house.
Yes, you would think an emergency department shouldn't have giant water bugs in their emergency room. But
No,
apparently they do. And
Yeah.
that fact alone would make me steer clear of going to that emergency room because I don't want to take one of those home in my purse. Thanks
Yeah.
very much.
Mhm.
So,
So now we're back on COVID stuff
yeah.
again. I don't want to talk about COVID. You want to talk about COVID?
I mean, it didn't go away, you know. You said you don't want to talk about COVID.
I don't know.
I
You
kind of
want
think we
to?
have to.
We're not?
Well, we have to talk a little bit about it. So in New York City, obviously 2 years ago, at this time of year, it was starting to come here from elsewhere. And then
I will be the first one to say I was wrong.
me too. At the time, I remember my dad and my brother and I were planning to go away on a trip. And I was like, oh, we should book, we should try to book the room now. And my dad said something like, well, how about we wait because we don't know if we'll be able to travel in the summer because of COVID. And I was like, Dad, it's like the flu. It's fine, And lo and behold, it was like the end of the world. Like for the next, 3 to 4 months, it was like seriously like a zombie apocalypse, like where I thought, the world was coming to an end.
Yep.
And I don't think I was the only one who thought that.
No.
And then it's never gone away from New York, but it's
But
gotten
it
better.
stopped. It like stopped one day. Remember that?
Well, the
know?
death dying stopped.
Yeah.
And then, well, hi. And then basically it's kicked up again. I don't know what happened, but it's now back to being as virulent as it was, though not as dangerous.
Yeah. So we are back to work with COVID. So this should be interesting. We saw a few FEMA trucks around and stuff. So there's a few FEMA guys out there. So hopefully they won't get them for our paying our taxes this time. So I know that was pretty shitty last time. Like they came to help us out. Some of the guys, they stayed the 2 weeks and then they stayed the other 2 weeks. So I think they did like a whole month. And the governor was like, oh yeah, you guys made a lot of money and we're going to take it.
Yeah.
Even though they came here to help us out.
And they were
so
working 7 days a week. I mean, these were folks
Yeah.
who literally
We
were
got
not
to go
getting a
home.
break. Yeah, many of these people like got COVID because they were completely run down
Yep.
and exposed 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And they left their families and friends and like loved ones in other states and really did get screwed. So, I mean, I'm glad that we're seeing some FEMA units back here, like some people come and help us with mutual aid because we need
Yeah.
it.
But
But-
only stay the 2 weeks. Don't
I
stay
know.
longer if they want you to sign. So go home so they don't. I really hope that they don't get them for that money again. So that was totally
No, I
not right.
agree.
Those guys, they work
Funny.
hard.
They did work hard.
So,
They worked very hard because they were doing like, were they doing even 12s or were they doing like 16s?
no, they were doing
like,
I think it like ended up being 16 because they had to be.
yes.
They had to get picked up from the airport,
early.
and then they had
Mhm.
to get brought to like the place where all their trucks are, and then they drove the trucks from where I think they were parked at the Bronx Zoo, and then they
Yes.
drove to the academy, and they got all they got their assignment for the day, and they got their radios, and then they went out.
Yeah. Which is like
And
really
then-
just,
Yeah.
that's an insanely long day for anybody to do. And like,
Mm.
I wouldn't want to do that 3 days a week, let alone 7.
Mm-mm.
And then at the end of it, to be told like, for some of them with a company who shall remain nameless, I think they basically told people like, oh, we're only going to pay you for the 12 hours instead of the 24.
Mhm.
And then there were other company, and then the city of New York was like, hey, you owe us a lot of money in taxes.
No.
And,
That was our impeached governor. That was the governor.
that was the governor.
Yep.
Yes, he's not our governor anymore.
No, I think they're taking his bridge away too.
Oh, really? Oh. Name it this time. No one calls it that anyway. So
No, they don't. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That should go back. like I think all the bridges should go back, you know? So
All the bridges should go back to what they were
their
previously.
old
named?
names.
No, I think every New Yorker just calls them by their previous names
Yeah,
anyway.
but why
What is,
why do you
like,
have to change the names on this
the
stuff?
59th Street Bridge is, well, it's technically the Queensboro Bridge.
Queensboro
but
Bridge. The
now
Ed
what is
Koch
it?
Bridge. Ed Koch.
Yeah, so it's still the 59th Street Bridge. Nobody calls it the Queensboro Bridge or the Koch Bridge. They just call it the 59th Street Bridge.
Oh, what's
Yeah.
the tunnel? Oh, the lower Manhattan tunnel is like the Hugh L. Carney.
Yes,
Who
or
is who? I never
yeah.
looked him up. I look up all this useless stuff and I never looked this guy up. Yeah.
Hugh Carey, right? Or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Carey or
I
Carney,
do
I
look up
forget.
a lot of New York City things because, I'm always very curious. I guess you're even more curious than I am usually with that stuff. You always have like
Mm.
good stories for like why things are named the way they are.
Speaking of that, remember when we went in that subway station? You were
Oh,
on
yeah.
Fulton Street.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
So New York City has like these giant subway stations. Like some of them are not that big, but some of them.
Well, not even that. Like if you're in uniform, like our friends in Detroit, they have the ultimate in urban exploring.
Yes, because there's a lot of like abandoned stuff.
All
and
right, so finish our story and then we'll tell the Detroit stories.
Okay, so in New York City, like there are some underground subway stations that are actually quite large. There's a few that are above ground that are also quite large, but like the underground ones tend to have like multiple layers.
Yeah.
And
And you
we
may
went-
never even know that there's another, concourse above you,
So that was the whole thing. We went down to look for a patient. And, by the time we got down there was no patient. Maybe they got on the train or whatever. And so Peter and I were like making our way back up and we saw this gate opened. And like, that's the thing in New York City, the subways have all these like gates everywhere that kind of, section off areas like where your pedestrians walk. And then you go
Yeah.
through the gate and you've paid the toll, you can go on the train. But this section was gated off, but the gate was open. Presumably because the station was being cleaned or whatever. So Peter and I went into that gated area and it was like a whole
It
concourse.
was like a frozen time capsule
Yes.
from
It
the
was from like the
90s.
late 90s. And it was like
Yeah.
all music posters and like movie posters. Cause that's one thing in New York City. Like there's a lot of advertisements in the train stations and on the
Yep.
trains, like for movies and shows and everything else. Or local companies or whatever. And this one had like, it was like 1998 encapsulated, and it
Was
was
it?
really awesome.
Yeah, because it was Zima. There was what, Zima?
Yes,
I
Zima.
gotta find the
which is
pictures.
an
You have to put the
alcoholic
pictures up on our
beverage.
Instagram. Yeah, but there was Zima. It was like a Hot 97 ad. It was so cool.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like when you're
was
in
cool.
uniform, you can kind of go anywhere. I'm like, oh, I didn't know we're allowed to be here.
I mean,
So-
or people invite you in, which is one of the
Or you
things that I've
ask.
always
That's the other thing.
loved.
Like we've been in a few places where we just ask.
You're like, hey,
and we
can
wanna
we
put
like,
some-
check that out?
Yeah. So
Uh,
will
Yeah,
see.
I always feel very lucky in this city when we're in uniform that we get to experience like some pretty cool stuff because
Mhm.
people, invite you into places that you wouldn't normally go into. And
Yep.
you get to like go into buildings that you wouldn't normally like have access to. And even the airports and stuff, like we really get like a lot of good. And I'm sure if you work EMS anywhere, you probably get
Yeah.
access to things that, you wouldn't normally have access to. But
Yeah.
in New York City, it's pretty cool. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of cool stuff that we have.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Like when I was in Monroe, we had
so-
Costco and stuff. So like they had like the whole they have like a giant freezer place in there. And then I think like they repacked the toilet paper because like I remember we had a job in that for that. I've been in Barnes and Noble. That's cool. Like all the conveyor
Yeah.
belts and everything. I've been in
I got
a
to
tea bag
go-
factory.
a tea bag factory?
Yeah, tea bag factory.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
The worst thing is like, you're supposed to be paying attention to what's what's going on with the patient, and
I
you're just
know.
looking around because you're like, yo, this is so neat.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well,
Yeah.
I went into in New York City, we have the Hells Angels, which is like a motorcycle gang. There's like quite a history on them if you want to Google it. But I got to go into their headquarters,
Their
and I have
lair.
to say, like, their lair, it was beautiful. Oh,
Mm.
I'll be right back. It's my
Yeah.
doorbell. It was beautiful, and they were super helpful. I'll be right
Yeah,
back.
they are usually very nice. So yeah. So I don't know what to talk about. So yeah, just ask. You'd be amazed, where you could end up and stuff. When I worked in Easton, my partner Jay and I, we used to just drive around and look and see, what was around. And if you're in Easton and you're coming from downtown on 611, after you cross under 78 on the right hand side, there used to be like a pile, like there was like the mountain, and then it was like rubble, looked like a building was there, and then it was like looked like a tunnel in there. So like we stopped, and it was
A
like some
tunnel, you
kind of-
say?
yeah, it was like a tunnel. There's stories of that during Prohibition, there was a tunnel that went from like the river to downtown so they could get the beer or whatever in there. But we found, I don't even know what to call it. It was like a tunnel or a cavern, and it was all brick lined and everything. It was super
Oh, that's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
mhm. And then I was just
Anyway,
talking.
really-
Who was I talking to? Oh, Rennie, when we used to work in Jersey City, we used to drive under the highway and stuff. Like there's tunnels that go all through. Like when you come out of the Holland Tunnel, there's like train tunnels on that side that go under and to the other side of the mountain
That's
and stuff.
crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing. I mean, working in any kind of civil service type of job or, first responder type job, like whether you're a cop or firefighter, EMS, you have like pretty amazing access to things that your average person wouldn't. I do feel like that's like a huge privilege, like when you have this job that we're like able
Mhm.
to even going into people's homes. I mean, that's in itself like a very privileged thing that we're allowed to do. You
Like
see
wiping your
things
feet,
that,
right? I was
like
wiping my
what?
feet. I always wipe my feet.
Yes, I know. I
hate
and I
that. I hate
sometimes
when people do that.
apologize for bringing my boots in because I
Yeah.
feel like, sorry, we're walking in your house.
I was just listening to Getting Salty the other day. I like that podcast.
Mhm.
I like those guys. And they were saying one of the guys on there, he worked in Manhattan in like one of the hoity-toity areas, and they had to take their boots off. When
Oh,
the
wow.
battalion chief like made them take their boots off to go in this person's house.
I mean, yeesh. Like I get it and I don't. Oh, thanks, Papa. If you I guess it depends if it's like a true emergency, like, it is what it is. I'm not gonna take my boots off and then have to put them back on. And I mean, now our boots are easier because they're like zip and tie.
Yeah.
But it used to be that, they were just tie up boots. So
Come a long way. What else have we got planned coming up there, Joel? You're muted.
plan for the new year.
Yeah, what are we doing? So we're back to work tomorrow.
We're back to work tomorrow and Tuesday. So hopefully we'll have some fun stuff to do. Like both Peter and I were sick. I had COVID. Peter was sick. So like we haven't gotten to work together in a little while,
No,
which is
I had a
bummer.
fight with the Remac. So I'll be honest with everybody. I had a horrible fight with the Remac this time for some reason.
Yeah, but you're not
and
the
I will
only
say
one.
that, despite all
Hard.
the studying that I did, I will definitely say the staff at the EMS Academy helped me out quite a bit. So, I'm very grateful for them and, the job that I have. So,
Yes.
Mm.
But the REMAC is very hard. And so the two of us didn't get a chance to really work.
All right. So we're fed and watered.
Yes, thank you.
It's getting breezy on the beach too. So I had to get a sweat. I had to run back to my villa. I had to run back to the villa and get a sweatshirt. It was getting a little chilly.
I see.
So.
Your bungalow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
It's over there. It's behind the palm tree. You can see it
Uh-huh,
over
uh-huh.
there. Mhm.
Hmm,
It's over
hard
there.
to see from this angle.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't move because my internet gets messed up. So
I see. Okay.
yes.
What island are you on?
New Jersey. Mhm. The island of New Jersey. Yes. It's very
No,
nice.
lovely.
Tropical.
lovely.
Very
Mhm.
tropical.
Mhm. So Peter,
Yes.
I feel better now that I've eaten.
That's
Um,
good. 'Cause you get cranky when you don't eat. I wonder if anybody else gets cranky. Their partner gets extremely cranky when they don't eat.
So do
I
you.
don't. I never get cranky when I don't eat.
Yes, you do.
No, I
You get-
don't.
You get neck pain and you start getting quiet. And then I know we need to get Peter fed.
We
For
get
me,
our
I just
best.
start hating life.
We get in our best fights when we're hungry.
Yes, we do. The To Eat Victor fight-a-thon starts when we're both hangry.
Yeah. Any little
But,
thing.
Any old thing, yes.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, that one
it's
time, remember the one
like-
we were
What's
on the
that?
street with the stretcher. We got in a fight over putting the stretcher because I wanted it in the street because I didn't want it to roll away.
Oh,
Yeah, because the guy was on the sidewalk
and he was big.
He was big. I wanted to leave it in the street so it wouldn't roll away. Plus, it didn't have to lift it as high. And I don't know what it was, but I think
I went to
was
take it on the
somebody else with us.
sidewalk.
Yeah,
We
but it
were
was
with an
Bill.
engine company.
Yeah,
Engine 230 had rolled up, and I was putting the stretcher on the sidewalk, and we were like, "What are you doing? Leave it in the street so we don't have to lift it up." And I was like, "Who are you talking to?" And then like we were very angry. And did
Mhm.
one of us go home that night, or
I think
don't know.
somebody went home.
Oh,
Yeah. I think I went home.
you might have. I think I
Yeah,
was angry.
because I think we're in the ER and we started fighting in the ER.
Ah, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes Peter gets abrasive. And
No, I
like,
don't. That's crazy.
I don't like
talk.
abrasive people. And then I have to say things back because I am not nice when I am angry. I get very petty.
No. Horrible. You're horrible.
So,
I always
yeah.
say nice things to everyone.
well, that is quite untrue. And I have an entire station of people to dispute that fact.
Mm.
Fact. So yeah.
Yeah, but like my biggest thing is, when you get lost.
Yes.
That is my ultimate
Everyone
pet
knows
peeve.
that's your biggest thing. Peter doesn't like when a crew gets lost on their way to the hospital.
Mm,
Particularly when that patient is in critical condition, which is understandable. But sometimes people get nervous. When they're driving, they may use their GPS, and then that takes them this sort of roundabout way instead of just like doing the straightforward way. But not everybody, especially the younger generation of EMS.
I just had this conversation with a captain the other day, and we were talking, and she had mentioned, she's like, the 63 times, it taking forever, da da da. And she said she was listening to the radio, and she's like, nobody helps each other out. Nobody picks up a job. They're in their 89, which their 89 is like their specific area that you're supposed to sit in. And there'll be a job, right over, outside the border or whatever, and then the second unit has to come in further, and they were like around the corner. She's like, they just don't pick this up. Nobody wants to help. And I said to her, I was like, they don't know where they are. And she's like, what do you mean? And I told her, I was working, this girl, she was super nice the other night, and she used the GPS for everything, and it was just like, I'm like, you got to learn your area, it's so much faster to get around, and you're going to miss something, because you're paying attention to the thing, you're going to end up hitting something because you're paying attention to the GPS, and it's not always.
I think people should learn their area, of course, but I do think there are some factors that come into that. Like one of the things that we don't have that like fire and PD have is that fire and PD remain in their area most of the time. Like they get calls in their area, whereas like for us in the city of New York, like if I'm in Brooklyn North, I could still be called to a job in Brooklyn Central and then be transporting to a hospital in Brooklyn South. And then now I get jobs in Brooklyn South, and I am completely unfamiliar with that neighborhood.
And I will wholeheartedly say, I will be honest, when I am out of my area, I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's when I
not
have to
used
use the GPS. When I'm not in my, we'll call it our first due. But,
but
I'm getting
when
better.
people
I do surprise myself every now and then.
But I also feel like there probably are other factors. Some people are just not good at directions. I know personally, because of my ADHD, when I first worked in Brooklyn, it was like the first 5 years, I still was always like with my partner, like, how do I get off of this block? Like, if I come off this block, do I make a left or a right to go to the hospital? Like, I would still get a little bit confused. And then I went out childcare leave, got diagnosed with ADHD, came back to the same area. And now I'm like, oh, this area is like super easy for me. And I get it now, but it took being on medication for me to get it. Like things that weren't innate, almost like, not that it's innate, but like I grew up in Queens. So like I'm very familiar with Queens, and obviously I know how to get around.
There's no
Queens.
rhyme or reason to Queens anyway.
There is.
There is none.
There is.
I don't know
But
who numbered Queens, but when they numbered it, I think they were running out of numbers or ideas.
I think a lot. I know Queens is a little bit like weird, but still, I feel like I try to have a little bit more compassion for people who are struggling with directions, and Peter is not as patient with those folks, so it's he gets a little abrasive. Just saying.
Mhm.
I don't work well under those conditions, Peter. Like if someone's yelling at me, I'm not like doing
Don't
better.
yell.
I'm
See, but
getting
that's the thing. You can't say
nervous.
I yell. I don't yell.
No, but you're like, bro, where are you going? That's kind of yelling.
That's not-
Aw, don't be embarrassed now, Peter.
I'm not embarrassed.
Pretty chest.
I will admit my faults. So, nor am I a cardiologist. I am not a cardiologist.
Yes. Yeah, there's certain things we're good at and others we're not so good at.
Mhm.
So on that hand, would you like to talk about fun jobs that we've been
Sure. What kind of fun
All right.
jobs? Let's see.
I think Peter's quite a good paramedic and quite a good EMT, to be honest. So
Oh, I gave my first EpiPen too when I was riding BLS.
oh yes.
I was so excited.
I
Super
mean
excited.
I'm sure it was exciting. I've never used an EpiPen. I'd be pretty curious about it myself,
Mhm. It was fun.
and how'd it go?
But all right.
Pretty good.
I didn't get stuck.
Yeah.
It was
Thank
scary.
goodness. A
Yeah.
little scary, but
It was. But we fixed it. We fixed the lady.
yeah.
So
But I can see why sometimes BLS doesn't always like grab that first thing because it is a little scary. It's a little
Mhm.
intimidating, especially if you've never used it. And there's
Yeah.
not really great in-services on those things. Maybe
mm-mm.
you get a little bit of an in-service.
I'll tell you one thing. It was from that video that I did with that other EpiPen, the real Epi, like this was like the knockoff brand. So like you had to like charge it. But the one that I did the video on, we're like poof, and I'm like, that one has some kick behind it. This one I was holding on for dear life because I was expecting it to get like thrown out of my hand like the other one, and it really
Yeah.
didn't.
Huh.
So yeah,
That is
Yeah.
interesting.
yeah. So
Maybe
it's brand specific.
Yeah.
So mhm.
Maybe that's like a new thing though. Like they don't want people to get that kickback that the old ones had.
No, it's
And
just
that's why-
price. It's just the price.
Hmm.
That's probably what it is. So, because Amanda, she has to get hers through like this online thing, because
Yeah.
the name brand's like $700. So I think it's coming down again now. But the one she
Years
has.
ago,
is
I
like a
had an EpiPen that was prescribed to me just because I had like some weird allergic reaction to like a squid ink, which I have to go to an allergist anyway. But
knockoff.
I ended up having like wheezing and all this other stuff. It wasn't like quite anaphylaxis, but it was definitely a
Mm.
reaction. And so I got an EpiPen and it was $150, even
Mm.
with our insurance. And I had that until it expired and then that was it. So now I need to just go to an allergist and I wouldn't get an EpiPen. I would just get, Epi and draw it up, I guess. Like well, hopefully I would. But so that was a crazy job. Like, so how about this other job? You and I had a patient that came as an anaphylaxis in Crown Heights.
Oh yeah. No. Oh wait, Crown Heights.
That young man.
Oh, the young man. Yeah.
And that
That
was
was-
it was like 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m.
It was early.
We-
Like we just started. I think we just started. And
Yes, we
stuff.
just came on and it was a weekday and there was a lot of
A lot of
traffic.
traffic.
And so I asked for BLS backup
Yep.
because we were afraid that, like it was going to take us 15 minutes to get down there. It didn't. I mean, it took us like about 10 or 11 to get down
Mhm.
there. And when we got there, the firefighters were like looking a little nervous. And
Yeah.
one of them, who probably was an EMT at some point, was like, this guy's going to need an EpiPen or, and like, so we got in
Yeah.
there and the guy looked very bad.
Yeah, he looked like a lobster. Like
Yeah.
that was
He was-
probably one of the best allergic reactions. Like where they say, you have the hives, the flush skin, the urticaria, the wheezing. Like
Yeah.
it was textbook. It was amazing. It was truly amazing.
What also was amazing was that this young man had never had an anaphylactic reaction in his
Yeah.
life ever before.
Yep. Yeah.
And he had no idea what he was allergic to.
Yeah.
All he knew is that he basically had a protein shake. He was going to go to the gym
some
or
eggs,
just
and he had
come
some
home from the
eggs.
gym. Yeah, it had like eggs in it, I think. It was like
Yeah.
he had eggs and a protein shake and essentially like had this crazy reaction and he got everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he got all the stuff, like all
Yeah.
the stuff in our protocol, and he was doing much better when we
Yeah.
got to the hospital.
That was cool though. You know what I mean? Like where you can really, you
You can
really
see it
see it
different.
work, you know?
I know, but I'm
So-
sure it wasn't so cool for him, you know,
Mm.
like
The worst
Um,
thing was that I felt the worst about it is, he was like, I don't have any insurance.
I know.
You
And that
know?
was the thing. Once he
And-
felt better, he was like, "Are you?
Do I have to
are you
go?
sure I need
Like-
to go to the hospital?" We were like, "Absolutely, you have to go to the
Yeah.
hospital." You
That's
know,
the
like,
worst thing. You know what I mean? Like when we see, you get the regulars who we always pick up, you know what I mean? Like our favorite people, the guy who's running for governor now,
Yeah.
because he likes the mayor.
Mhm.
We like him. And, you know, they go all the time, and they don't care about the bill. And it's,
Yeah.
it's interesting. The people who don't have insurance and are really sick and they should go, that's what they're really worried about,
Yeah.
like that kid, remember that kid who felt he was like skateboarding
Oh God.
and like he
Poor
snapped his
guy.
leg. Yeah.
Ugh.
It was like just a random like kick flip and like he fell and snapped his leg, and his biggest thing is how am I going to pay for this? And that's
I
truly
get it.
scary.
He had an open fracture, didn't he? Or was it a closed
No, it
fracture?
was a close, like a closed fracture, but it was,
But he was
you could
super,
see it. It was like,
it was like super deformed.
yeah,
And he was like, "Yeah, I have no insurance." And it's like, unfortunately, or the woman who fell from the third story.
oh, the third story. Yeah.
Yeah, she was on a fire escape. She was drinking. It was like a house party. She had a few drinks. She went out to like smoke a cigarette on the fire escape and fell somehow.
Yeah. Don't play on the fire escape. Like,
Don't play on the fire escape.
no,
Well,
you
who's
don't
the
even know
fire
how good
escape?
they are. You know what I mean? Like that is, they said it all the time, like nobody looks at the fire escape, how
Yeah.
sturdy it is in there, it's sitting out there. A lot of them have been there since they built the buildings in the early 1900s
Yes.
and nobody
And
thinks about it.
people just go and sit out there. But then, I mean, this woman fell and she fell from the third story of this building and fell into the backyard, not even the backyard of that building. She fell into the backyard next door. So who knows
Yeah.
what happened? And she had a fractured femur.
Yeah.
And like in the back of the ambulance, she was just like, "I can't go to the hospital. I have no
Yeah, she's like, I
insurance."
have to go to work. Yeah, I have no insurance. I have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah,
Like,
she worked at like Starbucks or something as a barista or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're lucky to be alive. And like, really, like you broke your femur that we can see, but God forbid you have like internal damage, like
yeah,
you might have like done something else. Like she
Yeah.
didn't have any like outward head injuries, but who knows what else was going on. And that poor woman is probably like this was
she's
months
still
ago,
messed up.
still going to like recovery and
That was the
physical
summer,
therapy.
right? That was in the summer.
think it
I think it
was,
was
yeah.
warm out. No,
Yeah, 'cause it was- no, I think so because she was outside, like it was, I don't know.
I don't remember if it was super cold. Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
I remember there
those-
was another one. We had another fire escape job in Bushwick. It was like a jumper. Wait, was I with you? Like we had to go through the one apartment and then they were all hanging out. They were drinking on the roof and like somebody fell down the stairs of the fire escape and we got there.
that sounds
and-
familiar.
I think it was a jumper, but I remember like the guy wanted to like fight me on the fire escape. Remember that?
Yeah.
Were you with me? I had to go through the window and
Yeah, didn't we go through the backyard and through the window?
we had to go through the backyard and then the guy was like trying to get up and he couldn't even stand because he was just that boxed. And yeah, like that almost turned out to like, we ended up like almost fighting him on that thing. So then ESU showed up and they opened the window of the apartment and they ripped the dude in. I was like, yo, this is
Oh
awesome.
yes, and that it wasn't his apartment, right? It was like
It wasn't his apartment. Yeah, it was
man.
somebody else. We're all
Yeah, like,
standing in
we're,
there
like,
hanging
dealing
out.
with all this in this other apartment. It's like some older man in his like 70s, and we're like in there with like
I thought it was their house.
firefighters and everything else. And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm so sorry that we're like bothering you with this.
No, he said, yeah, can you guys get out now?
Yeah. It's like,
Mm.
oh my God. Yeah, they
Yeah.
went into his apartment.
Mm.
I know. I mean, like, insurance is a big deal, like here in the United States.
Mm.
A lot of
And
people
plus
don't
like
have-
drinking. I remember Robin and they had another guy. They were on, it was Rob and Sean. They were on another unit in Bushwick and they had some hipsters on the roof. They were out on the roof or on top of the water tower. And they
Oh,
were
wow.
taking like pictures and dude fell off the water tower. It was like
Oy,
8 or
oy,
10
yeah.
floors. And yeah, he was still breathing.
I
Yep.
guess it's like alcohol helps you in that way, I guess. Like you don't realize
Mhm.
how bad you're falling. Maybe you don't stiffen up in a way
Yeah.
that like your average person would, and like would create more injuries. But like you wouldn't have been in that place in the first, you wouldn't have been in that position in the first place had you not been like annihilated.
Mhm.
You
What
know.
about that? Oh, there was that other guy. He where were we? Oh, we happened upon that in Manhattan. They were out hanging out
Oh,
on
that was
the
so sad. On the
it was like an
rooftop.
it was like an 8-story rooftop. Yo,
No.
drinking and hanging out on roofs, don't do it. Stay on the
As
ground
kids,
floor. Yo,
I know.
like there's dope views of wherever. Don't go on the roof. Don't go
I
on the
know.
roof. So this guy, he's on the phone or whatever, hanging out, having a good time. And I guess they said somebody bumped him or
Yeah.
something. So
He was on the phone and like someone bumped into him. And sorry. I figure my son is like talking, so it's hard to hear.
yeah, so he ended up falling 8 floors. Hold
to his
on.
death.
Now my kids are home. Hold on.
Okay.
You could have finished the story.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So yeah, he was on the 8th floor on an actual roof deck, like not just hanging off. Someone was like on the phone on FaceTime or whatever, and they bumped into him and he just fell over. And he fell 8 floors onto this mezzanine kind of
marquee. It's a marquee.
marquee. It was
Mhm.
like a marquee that said, the address of the building. It was all glass, like thick
Yep.
glass. And he broke his neck. That was it. Like
Mhm.
there was like really no outward injuries.
I
but
remember
he
we
was dead.
pulled up and they're all like, it came in as like a jumper down or whatever. And we pulled up and, everybody's looking. We're like, where is he?
Yeah.
Because like we're expected to see him on the ground. And then like we looked up and
That's
when he
right.
hit, he knocked he was on top of the marquee and like blew all the lights out of it and everything. All the
Yeah,
lights
he
were
fell
hanging.
so hard that all like these hard hats or whatever they called,
Hi-hats.
those hi-hats like
Yeah.
fell out of their, and they were just like dangling. And then I go back to like get the oxygen, change of scenery. Sorry, I'm in my
Yeah.
son's room.
Yeah, so I ended up on top of the marquee, so it was entertaining.
Yeah. Well, whenever I am looking for Peter, he's usually in the mix of things. Like the minute I turn my back to like grab something out of the truck, I know that Peter will be pretty much in the scene of the action. So he's a lot more nimble than I am. He likes to jump fences and climb ladders. And
That was
fire
interesting.
escapes. It's hard to do podcasts when you're at home with your kids. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that, but just know in advance, if you'd like to start a podcast, it's very hard when you have children.
We'll talk about people on fire. So we had a rash of like, legitimate burns.
Burned
So
up peoples.
yeah, so we did one. What was it? That would be like Cumberland. I don't know what section by Pratt. I don't know where that would be. What is that called?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what that's called. Yeah, somewhere over there. Anyway, so we went down.
Fort
It was like a burn. Yeah, Fort Greene. I don't know. But anyway, so we went down and there was an engine there and it just came as like a burn and it was like on the 3rd floor. So like, we're on our tip where we're walking, it's under 6, we're walking. So we came out of the stairs and it was like a haze in the hallway. I'm like, yo, what the hell? This guy was actually on fire. So apparently this guy, he'd been drinking and I guess he fell asleep with the cigarette and he lit like the blanket he was on or whatever he was on, he lit on fire. And thank God, you got to have smoke detectors in your house because thank God they had a smoke detector because that woke the woman up and
like a
she
roommate
came,
or
somebody was there, but it woke her up and she put him out. And, it was one of those, I love surprise jobs. You know what I mean? Like we think it's going to be like, oh, this is going to be dumb,
Well, that was the thing because it like the way it sounded seemed a little weird. And then when we got out of the elevator, or not the elevator, the staircase, we saw this haze and I was like, oh, okay, well, something was clearly on fire.
Yeah.
And then we walk in and the patient is actually sitting in like a recliner kind of chair. and all the
Yeah.
firefighters are standing around him. So I couldn't really see what they were looking at first. And I was thinking it was going to be like nonsense. And then like I figured maybe he lit something in the apartment on fire.
Yeah.
And then when they kind of like spread apart from him, it was like, oh my, like that fellow is messed up. Like he had like 2nd-degree burns all over his chest, and
Yep.
he was kind of obtunded.
Yeah, he was
but
obtunded
it was
too.
hard,
Yep.
and that was the thing. His roommate basically came out and was shocked that this guy was on fire, not even like flinching. And so
Yeah.
she like, put him out, called 911. So we didn't know if he was just like, maybe he was obtunded because
Or
he
he was
was
still
drunk,
drunk.
or because,
Yeah.
smoke inhalation or whatever. That guy actually, we ended up giving the hydroxycobalamin because he was pretty messed up and like,
Yeah.
and burned up and like was clearly in the thick of it. Like he was on fire.
Yeah.
Like that was the fire. It
Yeah, he
wasn't
just
like,
didn't have airway burns. That was the only amazing thing. He had no airway burns.
yeah.
So that was
Even
crazy.
the other fellow who like we had that
Yeah.
fire, he had 2nd and 3rd-degree
Third
burns.
and 4th-degree. He had like full thickness burns, that guy.
He ended up having amputations because of
Yeah.
it, but he actually did not burn his airway. That was shocking.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. And he wasn't in a lot of pain because remember that his pain was like under his armpits.
well, because that was the
That was
second.
the
Everything else
secondary
was done.
burns.
His nerves were shot. They were gone. Like he couldn't feel anything because there was nothing there to feel.
It was
All the nerves
wild.
were burned out, Yeah,
That was
awful.
that was a surprise job.
Yeah,
So,
it was. It was like 3 a.m, like some wild, like bizarro, like man on fire. And that was like it. That was literally like all the information.
Yep.
And it was like, sure enough,
Yep.
fellow is on fire.
And then like we had these other strange ones where it's like, you go for the old lady who fell, and then your meter goes off,
yeah.
like
That one. Well,
the
or my
gas
nose.
or Julianne's nose.
I have a very,
Yeah.
very
So,
acute sense of smell. So I went ahead.
we had we had another one. Oh, so I guess they had been to, I was with Justin. Justin Donaldson, he's a fireman now. So we'd gone for an it was like an ultra mental status or something. But apparently there was a gas leak earlier in the day in the same building. And I guess they thought that this person was home or wasn't home. And then the neighbors who usually check on this person came home to find this lady. And she'd been stuck in this apartment that was unventilated and was like still full of gas. And her rad 57 reading was like 25.
Yikes.
And shit. And like we gave her oxygen. We took her over, to the burn center because they have the hyperbaric chamber. But it was crazy. Like, natural gas will kind of do the same thing in high.
I had that job. Like we had it was 2 older women. It came in as a syncope. It came in as a cardiac.
Yeah.
And it was in Greenpoint, and it was in like one of those 2-family houses. So it was like an apartment downstairs and one on the 2nd floor. And the patient was in the 2nd floor apartment, and her sister, they were 2 elderly women. Her sister lived on the 1st floor. And when we get there, she looks unwell. Like she's kind of holding her head in her hands, like just doesn't feel well. She's saying she has a headache, she feels dizzy. And as soon as we walk inside this apartment, I'm like, woof, it smells like gas. Like, is the oven on? Like, I'm like, something's going on. Like one of the burners is messed up or whatever. And Peter
The meter
doesn't smell
peg,
it.
right? The meter peg
No,
too, I think.
I don't think so. Like it was just, and it was like, I don't know if we didn't have, I don't know, but like the cop that was there.
Of course we had our meter.
Yes, of course. One of the cops didn't smell it. The other cop said he thought he smelled something. And the patient's sister was like, yeah, I came up because I heard her fall. And when she found her, she was on the ground and she couldn't get up. And so we left. We like took everybody out. We left the apartment and we called for fire. And they were like, sure enough, there was a gas leak. And that was what was happening.
I think they were mad at us.
Yeah, they thought we were like full of
because like
bloat.
because we canceled them. We don't need them.
Yeah, but to me, it's like that's like I am very good with that. The minute I like smell gas, I know. Like I know it instantly, So
because like when they pulled up, like I could tell like they were mad. Like, oh, EMS calling in something, and then it was actually
well,
real.
now you're gonna have to evacuate this place because there's a bad gas leak, and now there's one patient overcome. So though, and I had one recently, a burn. I'm not gonna go too into it because it was pretty recent, but it was an arrest, and like when I got there, the fire lieutenant was like, she's pretty badly burned, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so she arrested probably on the toilet, fell face forward into her bath, which had boiling hot water in it. And then she drowned, I guess. And like she had like second-degree burns all over her torso and her arms, and her skin was like sloughing off, like blistered up. And she was in full arrest, but she was in arrest like she drowned. She probably drowned like a while earlier than that. So the burns were just like a secondary kind of deal, which when you see them, you're like, oh shit, like because the skin was just like not even like, we had to take the pads off from the BLS because I had a different monitor or different AED, and like the pads just like ripped all her skin off on her chest because she had all those burns and stuff. And like but she was done anyway. The drowning was pretty much what killed her. So crazy, right? To drown in your own bathtub, like, so I think she vagaled down.
That's crazy, bro.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Pretty
crazy.
sad.
I had another one. Oh, this is like years ago. They had a fight. This was in East Orange, and it was like a, one of those amazing hotels, that people stay in. And they had a fight. It was like two residents. They had a fight, and the one threw Drano on this other lady.
Yikes,
right,
man.
And she was like a dark-skinned woman, and you could see it looked like paint thinner and stuff. Like when you pour, like, like you're doing like paint stripper on paint, and then like it starts, like the color like runs down. Like you could see like her darkness, and like it was like the white pigment under, but it just looked like paint was like dripping down. It was horrible.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So
people are horrible to each other, man.
Yeah, it is. Like, that was bad. Yeah.
Those were bad burns.
That was wow. How did I remember that? I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, I did so much drinking in my 20s that I don't remember. I had so many crazy jobs in my 20s, and I wish,
Well, now you can remember them.
It is. It's so weird, So
there's a show right now on Netflix. I always watch these shows. Dang it, it's called Explained, and they like explain all different types of things. But one right now that they have going on is like The Mind Explained. They talk about like memory, and they say like for us, like we remember things that were emotionally significant. So like that's why like when you think of your childhood or high school years, you think of like these big things that happen, like graduation, prom, like having sex for the first time, like all these things that kind of like were significant turning points in your life.
My sex like for the first time.
Yeah, but that's a significant thing.
Wasn't that memorable?
Oh, maybe not for her. I don't know. But
probably wasn't at all.
So. Well, we're young when we do stuff. So, but for our jobs, I think like there's so many jobs that would be significant to someone else if they live through it. But for us, like, if it doesn't register emotionally as like, whoa, significant, like it sort of just goes away because it's part of our daily grind. And like unless something is so out of control, I mean, there's a few like that would come to mind if I thought of like my most crazy jobs, and they're usually the ones that emotionally made me feel something, like like the cat litter thing or whatever, and like
that was bad,
and this hoarding house that I had years ago, and then recently we had like that young man who was shot. And the reason why we have so many people shot, but his mother was on scene screaming, and like that is what got to me. And like I got to the hospital and like cried because it was like that significant to me as a mom, so like those are the things that register. But like how many jobs do you do on a daily basis that probably are pretty crazy, but like for the most part they don't really mean much to you? You're just like doing it, like it's not that you don't care about people, but like this is your job and you have to like maintain yourself on these jobs, so you just do them, which is why a lot of people probably do remember like their first cardiac arrest, because that was like a crazy turn, like that's like a sort of a career.
Oh, I remember one. I remember one of my first.
Yeah, one of my first. Yeah, because, and I remember my first trauma, because those are like those jobs that are like, they're significant, they're like a change. Like suddenly you have this career and now shit just got real,
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I don't know. Anyone who hasn't watched it yet, you should go check that out. I'm not getting paid by Netflix, but I'd love to. But Explained,
Mhm.
it's a really interesting series. They're like 30-minute long shows and they're really cool. But the
Interesting.
one about the memory is, to me, I thought it was like really awesome.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, protect ourselves quite well.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
till you
Yeah.
can't anymore, and then
Then
you
you
know.
have PTSD issues. Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Our mind is very powerful.
Mhm.
It lets you remember what
Mhm.
it wants you to remember, and also like it protects you from what it doesn't want you to remember,
Yeah. 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 Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. And I will say, I was wholeheartedly a believer in PTSD. Suck it up.
No.
So and then I
Mm.
had I had the guy is playing volunteer, and he cutting him out of the car. Simple door pop job. And turns around, he shot himself in the head as we're cutting him out. No big deal. And then somebody went and put something on Facebook about him, like a memorial. And that really bothered me. So like, why would you put this up? Thank God the guy was a gentleman and he didn't shoot me, because I would have never known it was coming.
Yeah.
And it just bothered me. Like, why would you put a memorial up for this guy? And then one guy took it down, and the other guy was like, yo, I asked you if you were okay, suck it up. And I went off the fucking deep end.
Yeah.
I went off the deep end. Like that was bad, man. So
Yeah, I was a little scared for you,
that was bad.
Well, but that's it. Like sometimes it's just one thing in many. Like you might have 10 traumatic experiences, and then one sort of gets to you because you got caught off guard, let's say, by it.
Yeah.
And then your mind is not able to protect itself from that, and then like something triggers it, which is like what happened, and it sort of feels like worse, like your whole world crashes down around you.
Yeah.
I think this job, to me, it bothers me when and I've never felt like just suck it up. I think this job is particularly traumatic to you. Like if you do this for your whole life, you make this your career, or even if you're a volunteer for 20 years, and you see some massively messed up things, like
Mhm.
you can only, I mean, the human brain is only capable of like, handling so much. Like
Yeah.
it's sort of like you're bombarded with like awful shit constantly. How do you get over that? So you can numb yourself. A lot of people who work in EMS like drink a lot. That's like a
Mhm.
pretty common way of numbing yourself, but that's obviously not a healthy way of doing it.
Mhm.
And so the whole therapy thing becomes like, oh, that's crazy, you don't need that.
No, but you have to. Yo, listen, everybody needs a counselor. You need a neutral party. There's
Yes,
nothing wrong
because
with a
you
neutral
can vent to
party.
each other. We all vent to each other, right? Like we all tell each other like wild stories. Even now we're telling stories, and it helps to get it off of your chest sometimes, but it also then burdens everyone else. Like we're
Yeah.
just like all like telling each other these horrific fucking things. Like
Well,
you
no,
told
it
me
usually turns up to like a one-up game. So
it
especially at
can.
work, like I love the one-up games, and there's some times that I wish we had the recorder.
I
When
know.
we're in the kitchen, like there's some dope
But
stories.
and there's some stories that like actually fuck me up to hear, almost because I don't have, when you go on a particularly effed up job, right? Like you're living it, you're living through it. So your body and your brain are doing their own protective stuff while you're on that scene, while you're taking care of the patient, while you get into the hospital, and you're done. But when you're not on that job, you don't have those same resources to pull from. So like you told me a story on Christmas morning, that you had this like young man who died, 22-year-old
Oh yeah.
person. And then also Scott, who you were working with, had told me another job like that he and Seamus had, where it was like the two young kids and their mom died, like, and the mom was there for like 2 days with this like 3-year-old and like, or 4-year-old and like a 3-month-old, and like both of those jobs like fucked me up. And I
Yeah.
wasn't even on them because I didn't have the
Mhm.
resources to pull from. I was just getting secondhand like upset, I guess, secondhand like trauma.
Yeah.
So like I think that's another reason why sometimes having a therapist to go to is like you're telling, I mean, poor therapist, like, but you're telling them your stuff. You're not
Yeah.
just like feeding it
Yeah, you
to
have
each
to
other.
unload it. You have to unload it on somebody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, someone who is a professional, I guess, and is meant to deal with trauma.
Mhm.
You know,
But yo, let's not
I don't
talk
know
about
what
mental
they.
health, yo, because everybody talks about this.
Yes, they should, Peter.
should.
They should. We need it. I think it's important. My dad grew up in a different time. My dad was a firefighter in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, like they didn't have that. And my grandfather too. My grandfather went to
Oh,
war, he's in the Korean War, then he was a firefighter throughout like 40s, 50s, 60s,
yeah.
70s. They didn't do this stuff. They didn't
No.
talk about that stuff, but
But
that
I
didn't
will say, from us, like as far as like our system and the way that we train people, it may not be, I don't know, to the European standard or other standards, or like, down in Australia. But I think that, having the ability to volunteer first, and kind of see what you're getting into, and then, some places, you become an EMT and then you're a volunteer, like, I like this, and I'm going to keep going,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to become a paramedic, but like other places, this is what you do, like you go to university,
Yeah, you're in there for
it's
a
a
year.
4-year degree, and they were talking to one kid in, was it South Africa? I think he said it was like 20,000,
Yeah.
to go to school to become, an EMT or, a paramedic, and to spend all that money, 4 years of your life, and then get out on the street and have a fucked up job, and now you're like, this isn't for me.
I know.
I couldn't, I think we're blessed here that, we can try things out and try different things, like even like a volunteer fireman, like for the most part, you start out as a volley, you like it, you apply to a career spot,
Yeah.
but you get to try it,
I mean, I didn't get to volunteer because even though there are voluntary or volunteer EMS in New York City, I didn't know about them. You know what I mean? Like they weren't a big part of like my upbringing, I guess, because my father was a career
Yeah.
firefighter. So like I didn't know that there were volunteer firefighters even in the world. Like it's pretty like sheltered, but my first job in EMS was pretty much like on a private ambulance. So like, and I did have some messed up jobs, but I'm like, if I had chosen to leave, like I could have, but
Yeah.
instead I chose to like continue on, get a career job in EMS and like make that my life. And then go to paramedic school and invest actual time and money and all this other
Yeah.
stuff, but that's a nice way of doing things. Cause I feel like, man, if I didn't want to do this and now I felt like, well, I got to do this because I just invested like an entire like education and
Yeah.
money to it, I'd be pretty upset,
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
So
well, there are good things from here and from elsewhere. Like, and
Yeah.
if you go to our Instagram at Rush the Bus, Rush_the_bus, you can actually check out a lot of cool EMS systems all over the country and all over the world. Cause we're always like chatting with folks who do EMS pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of differences.
Yeah. And even like, it's tough, like somebody's like, oh, bring back your tips and tricks. And, we need everybody's help.
Oh yeah.
Like
That's a good point.
we need
If
your
you-
help, because
Well,
I don't want to be, we don't want to be know-it-alls, we're not know-it-alls,
but it's also, it's a lot to come up. Like Peter is like our creative genius here. Like Peter, I'm like the grammar police and I edit every, all our stuff like that. And Peter is actually like,
I went to public school.
So like, I probably would have had a better education if I went to public school. I went to Catholic school.
Anyway,
I
go ahead.
know how to sew. But yeah, like Peter and I, we love having those tips and tricks because I think you folks actually really like them. And they're just like things that we find that make life easier when you work a career on an ambulance. And we have tons of those videos and we're going to like start reposting some of our earlier stuff for folks who haven't caught up to that yet. But if you have like stuff that you do that's kind of quirky or specific to your department, or it just works really well for you and your team, we really would love to hear about it. Cause that is the stuff that makes this career better and easier and more fun. EMS is a really great place to be, but we need to like make it easier on ourselves. So if you have something that you think is cool that you folks use, please let us know. You can, go to our Instagram. Again, it's at Rush_the_bus. You can message us. We love messages. We'll write back to you. Maybe we'll
Don't
talk on-
email us. I do.
Yeah, don't email us. I rarely check email.
Yeah, I don't check the email.
Go to our
We
Instagram.
should probably start checking email. But
I
you
know.
know, but yeah, for 2022,
My
you
own
know,
email.
we're gonna definitely gonna try to get out there a little bit more. We
Yeah,
are gonna try to get out
do
there
some
more.
visits. We were supposed to go to Chicago. COVID happened again,
Yeah.
so we're gonna get to Chicago. But yeah,
We
so
gotta go see we have to go see our buddy Eddie Joseph on ambulance 77.
of course we do.
Mhm.
We sure do. But yes,
Mhm.
I love Chicago, and we'll be there. We'll go there.
Mhm.
Um,
You should follow them on Facebook too. They're pretty funny. They're a
Yeah, they
funny
are
bunch
pretty-
over there.
what's the Facebook page for them? It's-
Ambulance 77.
Ambulance 77.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you
Yeah.
know, we love to hear from you folks, and we love anything you send us, really.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's not a tip, if you want to send us pictures of your ambulance, we would love to see that too. So we
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
like
Somebody cursed us out on New Year's Eve.
Oh, yeah. Well, I said we owed him money. I don't know what the hell he was referring to.
I
I'm
don't
still
know.
waiting to hear back. I did write back. I don't know.
I know he answered us.
You
So,
did? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
He said it was the wrong person.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that seems like a strange slip.
Yeah.
Now I want to meet him because I think he works with us. I think
Yeah, he works.
works.
He works in the
Yeah,
same
in the
bar.
city. Now we're gonna have to stalk him. So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
but
Coming for
anyway,
you.
folks, thanks so much for listening to this podcast. If you got this far, let us know what you'd like to see, and you know, if you want to chat with us and you want to talk about your service, again, get in touch with us because we will gladly have you on.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Especially
what
with a cool accent. We like cool accents too.
what constitutes a cool accent? Anything that's not us?
Mhm.
If you work in Wisconsin, oh my gosh, get in touch with us ASAP, okay? Yeah, like we'd love to hear from you. So
Yes.
thanks for listening. We love you folks. We're glad to be back, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Behind the 744 Gate Avenue on 750 Gate Avenue.